Garrett Jennings was elbow-deep in a busted water heater when his phone rang. The screen cracked and smudged with grease, flashing a number he didn't recognize. "Yeah," he answered, balancing the phone between his shoulder and ear while tightening a rusty valve. "Hi, is this Jennings Repairs?" A woman's voice asked, smooth, clear, and way too elegant for the usual clientele who called him about leaking faucets and jammed doors. "That's me," he said, grunting as he gave the wrench a final twist. "What's the issue?" "My front door's off the hinge." "I need someone today. It won't close properly." Garrett sighed, glancing at the clock. It was already past 4, and his 7-year-old son, Brandon, would be waiting for him at his sister's place. But rent was due, and the fridge at home might as well have been a museum exhibit, cold, empty, and depressing. "I can be there in 40 minutes, he said. The woman gave him the address, and he nearly dropped the phone. "Wait, you said Westwood Heights." "Yes, is that a problem?" Garrett blinked. Westwood Heights wasn't just rich, it was billionaire rich, the kind of place with gates taller than his entire apartment building. "No problem at all," he said quickly. "I'll be there." He picked up Brandon from his sister's, dropped him off at a neighbor's who owed him a favor, then drove his battered pickup toward the hills, the dashboard rattling with every bump. When he pulled up to the gate, it opened automatically. The driveway was longer than some roads he'd worked on. The house at the end was more like a glass palace, sleek, modern, and glowing under the early evening sun. He parked beside a black Rolls-Royce that probably cost more than his entire life and grabbed his toolbox. The door opened before he could knock. She was barefoot, dressed in a soft cream sweater and jeans that looked casual but probably cost $500. Her hair was long and dark, falling over her shoulders in waves. And her eyes, those wide hazel eyes, locked on him like she didn't expect him to look like. "Well, him." "Hi," she said. "Door," Garrett said, lifting his box. She blinked, then smiled. "Right, sorry, yes, come in, it's this way." He stepped inside, instantly aware of how out of place he was. His boots squeaked against the polished floors. The house smelled like vanilla and something expensive he couldn't name. "I'm Rowan," she said, walking ahead of him. "Sorry for the short notice." "No problem," he said. "I'm Garrett." She led him to the front door where one of the top hinges was split clean off. "I tried to fix it myself," she said, pointing to a bent screwdriver lying on the floor. "That didn't go well." Garrett crouched to inspect the damage. "You tried," he said with a chuckle. "That's more than most." She smiled, and he noticed it lingered a little too long. He got to work, asking her questions about when it started, what she noticed, all the usual stuff. But she kept hovering nearby, watching him closely. "You're good at this," she said. "It's a door," he said, glancing up with a grin. "No, I mean, you're fast, focused," Garrett shrugged. "Been doing this a while." She tilted her head. "You don't look that old," he smirked. "I'm 34, I've been fixing things since I was old enough to hold a wrench." "My dad owned a repair shop till he passed." Her voice softened. "I'm sorry," Garrett nodded, eyes back on the hinge. "Thanks," she was quiet a moment. "Then you have kids," he glanced at her, surprised. "Yeah, one Brandon, he's 7. Her face lit up. "That's a great age." "It is." "Wild, but great." He finished tightening the hinge and gave the door a push. It swung easily, perfectly aligned. "Done," he said, standing. Rowan stepped forward and tested it herself. "That's amazing." "It's a door," he said again. "No," she said, looking at him with a small smile. "You," he froze. There was something in her gaze, not friendly, not polite, something more. Then she blinked, looked away, and the moment passed. "How much do I owe you?" she asked, walking toward the kitchen. Garrett followed, but shook his head. "Call it 80. She opened a drawer, pulled out a sleek black wallet, and handed him a crisp $100 bill. "Keep the change, you sure?" "I am." He hesitated, then took it. "Thanks. I'll walk you out," she said, already moving. At the door, she paused. "Do you always do late calls like this?" "Only when rent's due," he said, then instantly regretted it. He didn't want pity, but she just nodded, thoughtful. "Well, I might have some more work soon, if you're interested." "Of course," he said. "Anytime?" She smiled again, and this time it wasn't polite, it was something warmer. "Good night, Garrett." "Night, Rowan." As he walked back to his truck, he felt something strange flutter in his chest. Maybe it was nothing, just a beautiful woman being kind. But he couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted. And inside, Rowan watched him drive off through the glass, her fingers resting lightly on the window pane. She'd called for a door repair. She hadn't expected him. But now, she couldn't stop thinking about the man who had fixed far more than a hinge. She just didn't know yet he'd soon fix her heart too. Garrett was elbow-deep in a busted sink at a downtown bakery 2 days later, when the scent of cinnamon and something sweeter caught him off guard. He turned, wiping his hands on a rag, and froze. Rowan stood in the doorway, holding a white paper bag and wearing oversized sunglasses, her dark hair pulled back into a low twist. She wore a structured navy blazer over a linen blouse and tailored slacks less casually flawless than before, but somehow even more out of place in this cramped, flour-dusted kitchen. "You stalking me?" Garrett asked, half joking, half confused. "You left your tape measure at my place," she said, lifting the bag. "And I brought muffins." "I've got 3 of those measuring tapes," he replied, taking the bag anyway. She hesitated. "I wasn't really bringing it back for the tape." He raised an eyebrow. "I wanted to ask if you do more than doors." "I can fix anything but a broken heart," he said, then winced. "I don't usually say stuff like that. I'm just tired." "I liked it," she said, withdrawing a folded paper from her blazer. "This is the list." Garrett looked it over. It was extensive cabinet hinges, a leaky skylight, a detached light fixture in a guest room. "This house of yours falling apart?" he asked. "No, I just haven't had anyone I trusted to fix things until now." He folded the list and tucked it into his back pocket. "I can come by tomorrow after I drop off my son." Her eyes lit up, but she reined it in quickly. "That works. You didn't have to come all the way downtown to bring this." "I had a meeting nearby," she said too quickly. "And I figured you might not answer your phone." He gave her a long look. "You always show up with muffins when you want something?" "No," she said. "Only when I'm nervous." "About what?" Rowan glanced around the kitchen. "I'm not used to asking for help." He nodded slowly. "Well, lucky for you, I'm used to giving it." She started to say something, but one of the bakery staff popped in with a tray. "Sorry, someone ordered a dozen gluten-frees and they're freaking out." "I should go," Rowan said, stepping back. Garrett followed her out. "You drive all the way here in that Rolls?" "No, I took the Jaguar today," he blinked. "Of course you did." She turned to him once they reached the sidewalk. "Do you ever take a day off?" "I can't afford to." "That's not what I asked." He studied her. "No. I don't." She tucked her hands in her pockets. "Maybe you should." He let out a dry laugh. "You offering to pay my rent while I do?" "I'm offering nothing," she said. "Yet." He watched her cross the street and disappear into a silver sedan waiting at the curb. It wasn't until the taillights vanished that he realized he hadn't touched the muffin. The next day, Garrett pulled into her driveway just before 8. Brandon was at school and the morning haze still clung to the hills like a veil. The house looked the same, pristine, expensive, impossible. Rowan opened the door herself again. This time she wore a soft gray sweater over a white tank top and black jeans tucked into ankle boots. She looked relaxed, almost. "I made coffee," she said. "I brought my own," he replied, holding up a dented thermos. "Bet mine's better." He followed her through the house. The list she'd given him was real. Everything she mentioned needed fixing, but it wasn't urgent. Nothing was, which made him wonder why she really wanted him here. She led him to the guest room with the broken light fixture. "This one flickers like crazy. I don't use this room much, but it bothers me." He set his toolbox down. "You want it fixed because it bothers you, or because you want another excuse to talk to me?" She leaned against the doorframe. "Do those kinds of lines usually work for you? They're not lines when they're true." Rowan didn't answer right away. Then she stepped into the room and said, "I don't date." "Never?" he asked, examining the loose wiring. "Not since my late husband. It's been 3 years." He glanced up. "I'm sorry." "Don't be." He wasn't. Everything he seemed. Garrett kept his eyes on the wires. "That sounds complicated." It was. He worked quietly for a few minutes, replacing the fixture with a spare she had in a closet. When he finished, he flipped the switch. Clean, steady light filled the room. She watched him from the doorway. "You're very good at this. I told you, I fix things." She stepped inside, her voice quieter now. "Are you always this calm?" "I don't have the luxury of panic," he said. "I've got a kid, a 1-bedroom apartment, and a truck that might die if I insult its engine too loudly. I stay calm or everything falls apart." Rowan's gaze softened. "And yet here you are." He didn't know how to answer that, so he gathered his tools. As they walked back to the living room, she said, I'm hosting a benefit gala next week. It's at the Langham. I need someone to make sure the lighting rig doesn't collapse. I'm not an event guy. I don't need an event guy. I need someone I can trust. He hesitated. It's not exactly my scene. Neither is mine, she said. But we both show up when we have to, don't we? Garrett met her eyes. There was something there, something unspoken but undeniable. I'll think about it. She nodded slowly. You do that. He left with the list half finished and her scent still clinging to the air around him. Something was changing. He could feel it, and so could she. Neither of them dared say it out loud yet, but it was already happening. The Langham Ballroom was a cathedral of crystal and chrome, with towering floral arrangements and spotlights that bounced off polished marble like sun on water. Garrett adjusted the collar of his navy jacket borrowed from his sister's fiancé, and tried not to think about how out of place he looked among men in tailored tuxedos and women in gowns that shimmered like stardust. He wasn't here to mingle. He was here to make sure nothing exploded above the stage, where the lighting rig now hung steady, thanks to hours of his work earlier that afternoon. A waiter passed with a tray of champagne flutes. Garrett declined, opting for still water from the bar. He scanned the room, looking for her. Then he saw her. Rowan entered from the far side, descending the stairs like she'd been painted into the scene, wearing a midnight blue gown that hugged her waist and fell in clean, elegant lines to the floor. A single diamond nestled against her collarbone, and her hair was swept into a loose knot that revealed the curve of her neck. She wasn't looking at anyone, not yet. Then her eyes found him. She walked toward him through the crowd, her heels silent against the marble. I wasn't sure you'd come, she said. You didn't give me much of a choice, he said. You told your assistant to put me on the payroll. I needed a reason you wouldn't turn it down. You could have just asked. I didn't think you'd say yes. Not unless I made it a job. Garrett looked around the room. This your world? Not really. My grandfather built the company. My father ran it into the ground. I'm just trying to keep it from collapsing. You run Jennings. You never said. You never asked. He studied her. You always this good at hiding things in plain sight. Rowan's mouth curved slightly. Only when I want someone to see me without assumptions. I didn't need the name to know who you are. She tilted her head. Then who am I? You're the kind of woman who shows up to a bakery with muffins just to see someone who made her laugh. The kind who asks questions because she actually wants to hear the answers. And the kind who throws herself into other people's messes to avoid her own. Her eyebrows lifted slightly. That's a lot of insight from a man who just met me. I noticed things. Before she could reply, a man in a velvet tuxedo approached. Rowan, the auctioneer's asking for you. She nodded, then turned back to Garrett. Stay, I'm not going anywhere. He watched her walk away, her silhouette swallowed by the crowd. A few people glanced at him, some curious, some dismissive, but he didn't care. He wasn't here for them. An hour passed. The auction began. Paintings, wine collections, luxury weekends in the Alps, each item announced with dramatic flair and applause. Garrett stayed near the back, where the shadows were forgiving. Then silence. Rowan stepped onto the stage. The room hushed. My late husband used to say that generosity was a choice, not a trait, she began, her voice clear but quiet. He believed people only gave when they thought they'd get something in return. I'd like to believe that's not true. Garrett watched her closely. There was no script in her hand. No teleprompter. We're auctioning more than things tonight, she continued. We're auctioning change for families who need food, for shelters that need roofs, for children who haven't seen a doctor in 3 years. And yes, it's tax deductible, but that's not the point. A pause. The point is, if we can fix broken things, then we should. Her eyes flicked to the back of the room, just for a second, just long enough. Garrett's chest tightened. After applause and bidding resumed, he stepped out onto the balcony. The night air was crisp, and the city sprawled below in a blanket of gold and steel. He leaned over the railing, letting the cold bite his fingers. Footsteps approached. I thought you left, she said, joining him. I needed to breathe. I didn't mean to call you out in there. You didn't. Rowan stood beside him in silence. Then she said, I wasn't lying about the house repairs, but I didn't need help with the door. He turned to her. Then why call me? Because I saw your ad. And I remembered your name, he frowned. What do you mean? I saw your file. Months ago, you applied for a facilities job at one of our properties. You didn't get it. Not because you weren't qualified, but because someone else's resume had a degree. Garrett stared at her. I remembered the name because it was handwritten. That stuck with me, so when the hinge broke I called. You tracked me down from a rejected job application. I didn't track you, I just didn't forget. He shook his head, stunned. Why? Because you're the only one who didn't ask for anything. Not a raise, not a refund, not a favor. Silence stretched between them, then Rowan stepped closer. I don't know what this is, but I don't want it to be just a job. It never was, he said. She looked up at him, her breath visible in the cold, and her hand slowly, deliberately found his. The city buzzed below. But in that moment, there was nothing else, only the quiet certainty that something real had begun. Neither of them said a word. They didn't need to. The storm hit on a Thursday, not the kind that rattled windows or flooded roads, but the kind that came with headlines. Garrett was on a job site downtown, patching drywall in a commercial space, when his phone buzzed nonstop in his back pocket. At first, he ignored it. He had paint on his hands and a finished deadline to meet, but the sixth call was from his sister, and when he answered, her voice was already tight. She's everywhere, she said. Rowan Jennings. She just went viral. Garrett stepped outside, ducking under the overhang as rain started to mist. What are you talking about? Some investor leaked private emails. Her board's calling an emergency vote. They're trying to push her out of the company. His jaw tightened. For what? They're accusing her of misappropriating funds, donating corporate money without approval. They're painting it like a personal PR stunt. She was helping people. Doesn't matter, it's politics now. Garrett didn't answer. The line crackled. You should talk to her, his sister added, before they take everything. He didn't wait for more. He called Mrs. Rivas, the neighbor who watched Brandon when jobs ran late, confirmed she could keep him overnight, then drove straight up the hill toward Westwood Heights. But the gate was shut. A man in a black raincoat stepped out of a waiting SUV and approached his truck. Sir, this property is temporarily restricted. Garrett leaned out the window. I need to speak to Rowan. She's not accepting visitors. This isn't a visit, it's personal. The man didn't budge. I'm sorry. Garrett stared at the gate, something sharp pressing beneath his ribs. Then he threw the truck into reverse and peeled away without a plan, until it hit him, the Langham. There was only one place she went when she needed to disappear without leaving town. The hotel concierge recognized Rowan's name immediately and led him to a private suite on the top floor. The hall was quiet, the air perfumed with lavender and silence. When the door opened, she looked smaller, somehow not fragile, but stripped of the usual armor. She wore a loose cream blouse and slate gray joggers cinched at the ankle. Her hair was down, the waves slightly damp. Her eyes were tired but steady. You found me, she said gently. You said you didn't run, Garrett replied. I didn't. I stepped aside before they shoved me. He stepped inside. The suite was elegant but sterile, no photos, no clutter, just money arranged as comfort. The windows overlooked the city, but she wasn't looking at anything. Why didn't you call me? He asked. I didn't want you to see me like this. Like what? Not in control. He took 2 steps closer. That's not who you are to me. She folded her arms, her voice low. I thought if I stayed quiet, it would blow over, but they twisted everything. The donations, the repairs, even the gala. They're saying I used company money to manipulate the public. Did you? Every dollar was accounted for, but I didn't wait for a vote. I thought it was the right thing to do. It was, Garrett said without hesitation. She looked up at him. But it doesn't matter, they want me gone. He reached for her hand. So walk away, her brow furrowed. It's my family's company. And it nearly destroyed you, let it go. Build something new. Like what? Garrett's hand tightened around hers. Something that's yours, with people who don't need you to wear armor to matter. She exhaled slowly. You think that's enough? I think you are. Something in her broke, then not in a way that shattered, but in a way that released. She leaned into him, her arms sliding around his waist. He held her, rain streaking the windows behind them, the city a blur of lights and motion outside their stillness. I don't want to lose you over this, she whispered. You couldn't, he said. Unless you walk away from me too. She pulled back just enough to meet his eyes. I never meant to fall into this. You were supposed to fix a door. I didn't fix the door, he said. I replaced the whole hinge. She laughed softly and he kissed her for the first time, not tentative, not rushed, just real. 3 weeks later, Rowan didn't go back to Jennings Industries. Instead, she sold her shares quietly and started something new, a foundation that funded emergency home repairs for low-income families. She called it the Jennings Trust, in honor of the name she rebuilt on her terms. At the launch event, Garrett stood beside her in a tailored charcoal jacket she'd had custom-made for him. Brandon was with them, dressed in a miniature version of his father's outfit, grinning as he held a clipboard like he was managing the whole production. After the speeches, after the handshakes, Rowan led Garrett to the back lawn of the venue, where string lights hung like stars between the trees. A small table waited, set for 3. That's ours, he asked. She nodded. The event planner asked if I wanted a head table. And you said, I said no, I already have everything I need. Garrett pulled out her chair. You're sure about this? I've never been more. He looked at her, at the woman who had once needed a door fixed and ended up opening her entire world. You know, he said as Brandon ran off to chase fireflies, I didn't believe in luck before I met you. She reached across the table, lacing her fingers through his. Then what do you believe in now? He smiled. Second chances and door hinges. She laughed, and this time it carried. Across the lawn, past the lights, up into the night. And for the first time in a long time, everything was exactly where it belonged. They were home. Garrett adjusted the cuff of his dress shirt, glancing down the hallway of the courthouse as the final papers were signed in the adjacent room. Rowan stood by the window, her arms folded, watching a bird circle above the courthouse garden outside. The sunlight streamed through the glass, painting her in a warm glow that made his chest tighten, a feeling he still hadn't gotten used to, even after everything. You don't have to stay for this part, she said, not turning around. Garrett stepped closer. You want me to leave? No, Rowan said, exhaling. I want you to be here, but I didn't expect you to be. I'm not going anywhere. We already talked about that. She looked over her shoulder. It's different when it's real, when it's not just words. He took the last step that closed the space between them. Rowan, you walked away from a life people only dream about and you built something better. You think I'd let a few legal signatures shake me? I didn't walk away, she said quietly. I made peace with the fact that it was never really mine. The door behind them clicked open. A woman in a slate blue suit stepped out, holding a slim folder. It's done, she said. You're officially cleared of all claims. The board has accepted your resignation and the internal review cleared you of wrongdoing. You're free to move forward. Rowan nodded, expression unreadable. Thank you. Garrett waited until the door closed again. How do you feel? Like I just closed a book I thought I'd be writing forever. He reached for her hand. Then let's start a new one. She didn't answer. She just leaned into him, resting her head on his shoulder. They stood like that until the hallway emptied, and the silence felt like a beginning instead of an ending. Weeks passed, and the Jennings Trust flourished faster than anyone expected. Garrett, while never comfortable in a suit, took on a quiet leadership role, managing the logistics for the repair crews and mentoring younger tradesmen through the Foundation's apprenticeship program. He still got his hands dirty, preferred it. Actually, but now there was a purpose behind every nail, every beam. One afternoon, Rowan walked into the workshop space they'd converted from an old firehouse, holding a rolled blueprint in one hand. We're expanding, she said, spreading the paper out on the table. Garrett glanced over it. A second location, a permanent one, close to downtown. I found a building that used to be a community center. Needs a full restoration, but the bones are good. He grinned. You're starting to sound like me. Don't get used to it, she said, nudging him with her elbow. Come see it with me. Brandon was at his piano lesson and Mrs. Rivas had him for the evening. So they drove across the city together, the radio low and the windows down. The building was a weathered red brick structure on a quiet street, its sign faded nearly blank. But the moment Garrett stepped inside, he saw it the potential the way Rowan always did. What do you think? She asked. He touched the railing of the staircase. We can make it work. They stood in the center of the main hall, surrounded by dust and old echoes. I always thought I'd rebuild something for the world, Rowan said. Turns out I just needed to rebuild something for myself. Garrett turned toward her. You didn't just rebuild. You reimagined. She stepped closer, her eyes searching his. And you, I thought I was fixing things to survive. Now I'm fixing things because I want to stay. With you, Rowan's breath caught. So stay. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small wooden box. She blinked, her lips parting just slightly. I didn't plan this exactly, he said. I didn't even know if I'd do it today, but I've been carrying this for weeks, looking for the right moment. Then I realized the right moment is whenever I'm with you. He opened the box. Inside was a ring that wasn't flashy or oversized. It was elegant and solid, timeless like her. Rowan Jennings, he said, voice low and sure. Will you marry me? She laughed softly, a single tear slipping down her cheek. You really think I'd say no? I think you might give me a speech first. No speeches, she whispered. Only yes. He slid the ring onto her finger and she wrapped her arms around his neck, holding him like he was the answer to a question she'd never said out loud. The wedding was small by design, held in the very building they were restoring. The scaffolding was still in place, the floor still half-sanded, but the flowers were fresh and the lights were strung by hand. Brandon stood between them, holding the rings, his hair slicked back and a proud grin on his face. They spoke vows, they wrote themselves vows about second chances and stubborn hearts, about building something that would never need fixing. As Garrett kissed Rowan, the applause that rose around them felt like the sound of something permanent settling into place. After the ceremony, they danced under the unfinished beams, the moonlight slipping in through the rafters. No tuxedos, no gowns, just music, laughter, and the people who mattered most. Later, when the others had gone and Brandon had fallen asleep on a bench with his jacket as a pillow, Garrett and Rowan sat on the steps of the old building, her head resting on his shoulder. You ever think about how we started? She asked. All the time. A door hinge, he smiled. Best broken thing I ever fixed, she looked up at him. What are we building now? Garrett kissed her temple, pulling her closer. Forever. And in the quiet of that night, surrounded by sawdust and stars, they began their forever, one bolt, one beam, one heartbeat at a time.